Welcome to the Cocktail Spirit from Small Screen Network. I'm your host, Robert Hess. In this episode, we're going to be making a gin cocktail, specifically one using Hendrick's gin. And to show this cocktail to us, a good friend of mine, Charlotte Voisey. Charlotte?
Thank you, Robert.
Now, you actually work for Hendrick's, right?
That's right.
What do you do for them?
Well, I travel around the US and educate bartenders and the folks at home all about Hendrick's gin. And also, gin in general, what it is, how it's made, what makes Hendrick's a little bit different. And every once in a while, if I'm lucky enough, I get to mix them a cocktail.
And so we're going to get to that later, I hope?
Absolutely,
right? Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Now, as you're traveling around, what are some of the common questions people ask you, first about gin specifically, and Hendrick's even more specifically?
Yeah, I find a lot of people out there have a little resistance to gin, so there are a few questions. A lot of people think perhaps they don't like gin. So it's a great opportunity for me to answer that with explaining really what gin is, the different flavors that can be in gin. Hendrick's has a wonderful array of botanicals. The cucumber is probably the most famous of which, and it's a very likable flavor.
Mm-hmm. Now, I often find that some people, bartenders or even drinkers, are a little bit maybe cautious about Hendrick's because they hear so much about that cucumber and think, oh, that's not going to work good in this cocktail or that cocktail. But I find that Hendrick's works good in virtually any cocktail I normally use gin in, where maybe some gins don't quite work quite so well.
Right. I think the secret is the balance of botanicals we have in Hendrick's gin. You're absolutely right. Cucumber is the one that everyone knows and loves, and I think we have a lot of fun with the cucumber. But cucumber itself is a very subtle flavor, and it's also just one of 13 different elements we have in the flavor profile of Hendrick's. So it really never overpowers a cocktail at all. It's something that we can draw out of a cocktail and highlight, but we have beautiful seeds, berries, roots, citrus in Hendrick's, so the cucumber is just one nice element of many.
What are all the botanicals used in Hendrick's?
Well, we use juniper berries, of course. We have coriander seed and caraway, which give a light spice. We have a couple of roots, angelica root and orris root, which really, rather than giving their own flavor, help to bind the other flavors together and highlight particular botanicals, such as the orange peel and lemon peel. Cucumber, of course, we know about. We've spoken about that. But we also have about 4 different types of flowers in Hendrick's
flowers,
gin.
that's kind of unusual too, isn't it?
It is a little unusual. Gin's always meant to be aromatic, certainly in my opinion, and researching through history. So 4 of the flowers that we use really help to highlight a delicate aroma of Hendrick's. We have the rose petal, which you probably heard of too, Bulgarian red rose petal, but we also have chamomile, we have elderflower, and a local Scottish flower called meadowsweet, since Hendrick's is actually made up in Scotland.
In Scotland, so
yes.
It's not a London dry gin.
It's not a London dry gin at all, no. It's made up in Scotland on the west coast by William Grant and Son, family distillers since the 1800s. It's actually made close to Turnberry Golf Course. I don't know if you're a golfer yourself.
Not really. If they got a bar, I might hang out there, but not the golf course itself.
Well, it makes a great gin and tonic at the end of a good golf game. So absolutely, Hendrick's is Scottish.
And how do you actually distill it then? What's this distillation process? Because I know there's a couple different styles.
Yeah, there's different ways to make gin, of course, neutral grain spirit and your botanical mix, many different ways to bring those two together. Hendrick's, again, takes an unusual path for distillation, drawing on the craftsmanship that William Grant & Sons has up there in Scotland and the wonderful copper pot stills available to us through the single malt whiskey industry. We have a Carterhead still and a Bennett still. These 2 copper pot stills both do a very different style of distillation. The Bennett still allows us to really macerate and steep the botanicals in the neutral grain spirit during distillation, whereas the Carterhead still, we have a contraption called the botanical basket, pretty much like a large copper tea bag, if you will, full of the botanicals. As we start distillation, the spirit passes through this botanical basket in vapor form and comes into contact with the botanicals, and the botanicals impart their flavor in a very light way. This promotes good aroma and fragrance on Hendrick's gin.
So it'd be kind of like boiling some water on the stove and holding the tea bag in front of the spout of the water pot as the steam comes out.
Yeah, it's exactly it. That's the process. Mm-hmm.
Now, how long do you actually macerate in the Bennett still, the botanicals?
It's around about 20 hours in total, that process.
And then you combine that with the Carterhead still product?
Yep, we take the new make spirit from both stills and then we combine them together, we marry them together, and that becomes our Hendrick's gin.
And you use different botanicals in the 2 different stills or the same botanicals?
We use the same botanical set in both stills, yes.
So you could actually then compare the gin made in one alone between
You
the
can.
gin. Have you tried that before?
Indeed, I have. And if you next time you're in Scotland, Robert, I'll show you as well.
Okay,
It's a good experiment to do.
Okay, thanks. Now, when you're thinking about cocktails you're going to be creating specifically for Hendrick, is there a particular direction you head in and certain things you think work best with it?
Hendrick's gin for me, like all gins, is very versatile when it comes to mixing. I've mentioned that we have 13 different botanicals to choose from in Hendrick's, and I always see in front of me different paths. I see a spicy path, a citrus path, a refreshing kind of cucumber area to work with, or the latter one, which is probably my favorite, the floral path. So I like to use sort of floral ingredients that really add and showcase the delicacy of Hendrick's gin.
Now, all this talking, I'm getting a bit parched. Do you think we can fix that up here?
Let's make a cocktail.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so what I've decided to make for us today, Robert, is the Cucumber and Lavender Sour, if you will. I'm going to start off with some English cucumber, and I'm just going to pop this into the mixing glass and give it a good muddle. So just using some fresh cucumber, of course, to bring out that first ingredient of Hendrick's gin. So just a little muddle, just to really chop up that hard cucumber so we can enjoy the flavors from it. Next, I'm going to add some fresh lemon juice. So, of course, we like to add some nice citrus into our cocktail. So half an ounce of freshly squeezed lemon juice I'm just going to add. And then as the sweetener to this drink, this is how I'm going to introduce the lavender. I found this natural syrup, a lavender syrup from Sonoma, which works very well in this cocktail. I'm going to add about a 3/4 ounce of the lavender syrup as my sweetener.
So that's probably just simple syrup in which they've done some steeping of some lavender in it, probably?
Yeah, they've got a natural cane sugar-based simple syrup, and then they just infuse some local lavender. So it obviously has sweetness and flavour and aroma to it. Then comes my Hendrick's gin. I'm going to grab this bottle right here. And about 1.5 ounces of Hendrick's we can pop into the mixing glass too. And there we go. And then before I finish off, a couple of other ingredients I'm going to add that really just give a kind of kick, secret kick to this cocktail. The first is just about 1/4 ounce, just a dash of ginger liqueur.
And this is like any ginger liqueur you might get, or is this like a ginger syrup?
No, this is actually a ginger liqueur, so it is an alcoholic ingredient, and you can find, there's a couple of brands out there, so whichever one you find in your local store works really well. And this addition is just to give some kind of little kick, because otherwise these ingredients are quite soft. And then finally, I have a good friend of mine from London, has a company called Nijisaki, and he makes bitters.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we were chatting the other day, and he actually has a lavender bitters, so he sent this out for me, and we're just going to add literally 2 drops of lavender bitters, and again, really just to highlight the aromas in the cocktail. So I'm going to shake this up. Might want to stand back. Okay. Oops. And I'm going to serve this in just a beautiful little sour glass. Some of these lovely big ice cubes. So we're going to strain that over the fresh ice. You can imagine how nice and refreshing this is going to be. But let's give it a little garnish. So as a garnish, just to give a nod to the ingredients in the cocktail, I'm going to put a trusty slice of cucumber on the top, which looks lovely. And then a garnish for me is also about aroma. So I found some dried lavender here, which works very well, just sprinkled on the very top of the cucumber slice, so it doesn't necessarily fall in the drink. And so here, Robert, here's the Cucumber and Lavender Sour.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this a lot. And hopefully you guys will enjoy it as well, the Cucumber Lavender Sour, thanks to Charlotte Voisey and Hendrick's Gin.